Hey guys, this is the packet for practicing the skills from chapter 5, and I just wanted to be able to go through it and help you with a couple from each page, so hopefully you can have better luck in case you have forgotten. Keep in mind that you can go back to the chapter 5 resources folder, go into the lesson videos, and rewatch any videos or parts of videos that you need in order to be successful on these skills. So the first page is asking you to write an equation in slope-intercept form using the graph. So keep in mind that slope-intercept form is the mx plus b, where m is going to represent the slope of the line, and it's going to be located in front of the x. And then also keep in mind that the b is going to be what we call the y-intercept. So it's like where it crosses the y-axis. So it says find, well, it's supposed to say find b by seeing where the line crosses the y-axis. And then you're supposed to, so you're looking for that. And then it says to find m by counting how far up or down and then how far over. So let me help you with that on a couple of these. Keeping in mind that a couple exceptions to the rule, if you have a horizontal line that does not go up or down, so we say that it has a slope of 0. If you have a vertical line, then that doesn't really make sense to describe its steepness. I always say it's like a roof. The roof can slope up, it can slope down, it can be flat, but it can't go straight up and down. And so when you have a vertical line, it also has kind of a unique slope. It's called undefined. This is all review from chapter 5, but it's a lot to take in, so I want to just talk about it again. When you go to write a equation for horizontal line, you can't really use slope-intercept because it only crosses the y-axis. So for example here, if I had an x and a y-axis to graph, a horizontal line is going to only ever cross the y-axis. So when you write a horizontal line equation, you don't really use mx plus b. You just write y equals and then whatever number it crosses the y at. So for example, let's just pretend that this was crossing at 2. The equation of that line would be y equals 2. If this was crossing at negative 2, that would be y equals negative 2. So these are kind of the exceptions that will not have the mx plus b format. Vertical line is similar in that when you draw a vertical line, it's only going to ever cross the x-axis. So your equation will read x equals, and then if this is my axes, let's say this is crossing at 1, so that would be x equals 1. If this line is crossing the x-axis at negative 3, then that would have an equation of x equals negative 3. So just like you did with the horizontal, you're going to say what axes it crossed, which is x, and then equals where it crosses. So that's going to come up here in number 4. So kind of think about that when you get to it. Normally, this can be a slanted line. So for example, here, if I'm going to do number 2, let's say, I'm supposed to find b by where it crosses the y-axis, which is at 1. So my b value is going to be a 1. And then my slope, I look for other points where it crosses in a nice, like a nice spot, not in the middle of a square or anything. So this one looks like it would cross in these spots. Hang on a sec. Trying to use my old lady eyes. So here, oops, here we go. I draw in some points that are like right on a crisscross. So like right here or right here. And so then as I look, you always go from left to right. So you would look at this point and say, well, to get to this next point that crosses nicely, I have to go down 2 over 3, down 2 over 3. So if you're going down, it'll be negative 2 and then over 3. So I'm trying to write my equation in y equals mx plus b form. So I simply take my m, which is negative 2/3, put it in front of an x, and then add a 1. And so then what will happen when you go to take your quiz on Friday is it will just have a couple of problems from this whole packet that you will enter your answers in for. So then let's take a look at one more of these. I don't know, maybe down here, number 7. And in number 7, I can see that my b value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm looking for other points where it looks like it crosses nicely. I'm looking here. Where do I feel like it crosses great? It crosses here. And then it crosses here. Those are kind of neat ones. So then again, I have to go left to right. So I start here on the left at my point, and I have to go up 1, 2, 3 over 1. Up 1, 2, 3. Oh, hang on. Let me erase that so I can see better because they weren't the same. So what I'm looking for is points where it crosses nice and neatly right through here, and then it seems to cross right through here. So if I go on there, I'm going to go up 3. That is getting so messy. It keeps turning it into a line for me. I'm sorry. Here and here, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3 over 1. So I decided it crossed at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the slope is up 3 over 1, which we would just normally write as 3. So it would be y equals my mx plus b. So that is going to be my equation. It's going to go up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, and then cross the y-axis at 5. My dog is making a lot of grumbly sounds. I'm not sure if you can hear her. So this ties back up to what we wrote at the top of the paper. So hopefully if you paid attention to that, you'd be good to go. If it was me, I would stop and I would work on this kind of as a day 1 activity. And then I would watch the rest of the video tomorrow, looking at kind of the next phase. So that's totally up to you. All right, so hopefully you stopped and worked on the rest of it, but I want to keep going here and show you a little bit of how this works. Keeping in mind, this is asking you to write the slope-intercept equation. And so this goes back to where your job is to find m. That happens in 4 different ways. It could be given. You might have to use the slope formula. It might tell you that it's parallel to something, which means that you're going to use the same slope as that other line because parallel lines have the same slope. And it might tell you it's perpendicular to some other equation, at which point you need to use the opposite reciprocal, meaning you have to take whatever they give you, change plus to minus or minus to plus, and reciprocal means you need to flip it over. So if they gave you a 1 over 2, you would use a negative 2 over 1. So those are the ways you're going to get your B. And then I'll show you, your M, and then I'll show you in here how we did the B value. Okay, so keep in mind, this is my X, my Y, and my slope. So if you remember in chapter 5, and you can go back and watch the video for writing the equations of lines, I always said to just go with your y equals mx plus b format. Put the y value that you were given in for y. Put, in this case, the slope value they gave you. So from up here, I'm in this scenario where it's giving me the slope. So when I do my equation, now that I'm at this point, I go ahead and I put in the slope they gave me. And then here, I'm going to put in the x that they gave me, which is a 1. And then I solve that for b, kind of going back to the earlier chapters where we learned how to solve equations. 3 equals 4 times 1, which is 4. Take away 4 from each side. So b has a value of negative 1. M has a value of 4. So my final equation that they're asking for will be y equals my m value, then x, and then my b value. So now my dogs are going to start growling. Cinder, come here. Leave it alone. So let me jump down here to do something where I'm given 2 points. That's going to be this other scenario, where now I have to use my formula to find the slope, and then I can go forward and do the same thing I just did to find B. So if I think of this as x1, y1, x2, y2, my slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I get 1 over negative 2. So the slope that I will use later is going to be this. So now I have to find my b in the exact same way. I always do the same thing. Y equals mx plus b is like my formula. I have 2 points, so I can use whatever point I want. I'm going to go ahead and use these for my x and y. So when I get to the y part of the equation, I'm going to write my 2 equals, and then the m that I just found, and then that's here. Then I'm going to put in the x that I was given, and then this is the thing I'm trying to find. So I go back to my earlier skills of solving. I do have to do with this. Negative 1/2 times 5 is going to be negative 2.5, and you can obviously do that on your calculator. Then I need to add that to the other side to move it, so that here it'll cancel out. When I add these two, b ends up being 4.5 or 9/2. So I always write it like that because I'm a math teacher, but however you write it is fine. Now keep in mind, you're trying to write this equation. So I write y equals, and then the m value that I found right here, then my x, and then the b value that I found right there. So in the end, this is my equation. All right, so these top few give you the slope. So up to this point, you're given the slope. And then up to this point, you have 2 points. So you would follow this example right here for this first section and this example right here, or go back to chapter 5 and watch the full lesson videos on finding those equations of the line given the different information. I personally would probably stop right here and then work on those and really take time to do them right. Then I'd come back to this video on a different day to finish up the rest. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you gave yourself a little break. This is a continuation of what we were doing before, because remember, we have to, for our equations, write y equals mx plus b. And the 4 ways we filled this spot is that it was given, which we already did, because that happened in A through F. Then we had to use the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That happened in G through N. Now today we're going to be looking at this next section, Roman numeral 2. And in Roman numeral 2, so these two came from Roman numeral 1. In Roman numeral 2, we're going to be given the slope because they're going to say, hey, it's parallel to something else. And that means to use the same slope. Because when two lines have the same slope, if one's going up at a certain steepness and the other's going up at the same steepness, they'll never meet and they'll be parallel. So watch for that. Are they saying it's parallel to? And then the last way is they're going to say it's perpendicular to this other line. And what that means is that you need to use the opposite. So if it's plus, you change it to minus, and if it's minus, you change it to plus. And you have to do the reciprocal, which means you need to flip it over. And that will guarantee if you have one line going this way, the other line's not just going to cross it, but it's going to cross it at a 90-degree angle and therefore be perpendicular to it. So if you're not sure what that means, like if you're given the slope of 3, The perpendicular slope, you have to change the sign. So since that was positive, you'd go negative. And since this is technically 3 over 1, you'd go 1 over 3. If you were given a slope of negative 2/3, the perpendicular to that would have to be the opposite, which would be positive, and flipped over, which would be 3 over 2. So that's what this whole opposite reciprocal is. You change the sign, and then you flip it over. Then, in terms of finding b, you're going to find b the same way as you did yesterday. So you're just going to find b using y equals mx plus b, but you're going to plug numbers in for these 3 things that you already know. So I'm not going to do a lot of these because there aren't very many, but I'll do this first one and then you can figure it out from there. It says, or you can go back and watch the video from chapter 5. It says write an equation with a line perpendicular to, and then it gives me a line that I have to be perpendicular to. That's to help me find the m. Then it gives me an x and a y. And once I know the y, the m, and the x, I can find the b. So in my notes down here, it says if it says it's perpendicular to something, I'm supposed to use the opposite reciprocal. So what slope is given here? The slope of this line is going to be, since it's in mx plus b, whatever's in front of the x. So I've been given a slope of 2, which means I have to use, since it's perpendicular, I need to use the opposite reciprocal. So I need to use, since that was positive, I'll need to use a negative. Since that was a whole number 2, which is technically 2 over 1, I'll have to use 1 over 2. So now I know my slope value is going to be a negative 1/2. I know my x value and my y value, and I can plug those numbers in to find b. So for y, I put in my y value, equals m, I put in my m value that I just found. For x, I put in the x value that they gave me. Oops, that's negative. And then plus b. So now I bust out my skills from earlier in the year, and I think, okay, I have to multiply these together. Negative 1/2 times negative 1 becomes positive 1/2. Then to solve for b, I have to go and combine these. 1 minus 1/2 will still leave me with 1/2, because if you have a pizza and your friend eats half, you still have half. So now I can take my b value, my m value that I'm using, and write my equation. Y equals an m value of negative 1/2, x plus a b value of 1/2. There we go. So then in each case, you just have to pay attention. This one's going to be parallel to. Okay, this one's going to be perpendicular to, parallel to. So you just have to figure out, well, what slope are they giving me? Here they're giving me 2 points. So the slope that I'm given is going to be whatever I get when I do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So they're giving me 3 minus 4 is negative 1. This on the bottom becomes negative 6. So if I'm given a slope of 1/6, what would I have to use? Well, parallel means to use the same m. So I'm going to have to use 1 over 6. And then I'm done with these 2 points. I used them to find my slope. Now this is the x and the y it has to go through. So I'm going to go and do this process using my m, my x, and my y to find b. So this is a lot of the things we learned in chapter 5. It's just kind of practicing those skills. Like I said last week, we're a little bit ahead of the kids who are actually in the building, or I should say were in the building. And so we want to make sure you guys are in the same spot as them. So we might as well slow down and take some extra time on these tricky parts. So hopefully that helps. And the only other thing you have to do besides this packet this week is to complete the quizzes. That's the one where you need to join with the code. You only have one attempt, but if you stop, you can go back to it using the same code and go in through Google. Just keep in mind that it is due at 8, and after that, at 8 o'clock Friday, you will not be able to access it anymore. So check the weekly plan. It'll help you with the links you need. Have a great night, guys. Bye.